This is the Unstarving Musician podcast. I'm your host, Robonzo. The podcast features conversations with me, indie music artists, and industry professionals, and it's all intended to help other indie music artists be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Hey, indie music fans and indie musicians. My new single, New Gods Part 2, is out now on all digital platforms. It's a collaboration with Peter Rand, who's been on this podcast. There will be a link in the show notes to that episode. The song is my personal homage to Led Zeppelin, Yes, and prog rock, with a little social commentary. Find popular streaming service links to New Gods Part 2 on my website, robonzo.com, or listen to it right there. Heck, you can even download it for name your own price. That's cool, right? My guest for this episode is Lars Deutsch. He is a LA-based producer who's acquainted with my friends at SoundStorming, the musician fan collaboration app for iPhone. Thanks to Arnaud Bosch at SoundStorming for connecting us. At the time of our conversation, in February of this year, 2021, Lars was excited about an artist he'd been working with. The artist is Amiena. You can find a link in the show notes to her latest single, Halo, which I believe will be followed up with a full album soon. This was a really great conversation, in part because this episode is on the heels of another artist development guy, Davis Franz. You should check out that episode. Also, a link in the show notes for that. But mostly, this was an interesting conversation because Lars and I had such a great discussion about the artist development world. We also discuss his career, the struggles he sees in artists regularly, the artists he deals with, audio branding, sync licensing, what emerging artists should consider before taking the plunge to work with an artist development professional or company, and more. And there's a wee Easter egg at the end of the episode. After we were officially done with the episode, Lars shared some more interesting stuff. We were still recording, so I considered editing that bit into the prior conversation, the official episode, but decided it would best serve as a bit of bonus material at the very end of the episode, after all the credits, so to speak, after the point at which I normally sign off with a whole lot of love and all that. There's more, and it's good stuff, so hang out for a few extra minutes at the very end. You'll be glad you did. All right, here is me and Lars Deutsch. Hey Lars, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good. Do you see me on video? No, right? Let's see.
No, I don't see you on video.
Love the camera spot.
Well, it is really helpful with the hiding of the age. I mean, then again, I'm too lazy to shave, so that's kind of like, it hurts me a little there, but yeah, the angle works a little for you. Yeah.
Well, there's no helping me with the gray hair, so I don't think angle's gonna help that.
There are limits. I have to. My buddy Yoko does this stuff where he does all his like Skype and all this video in front of like a black. It's black behind him, and he looks very like 3D, very nice. So I tried this earlier, and I have kind of like lights for that flood the room, so I don't look as wrinkly. But the problem is I tried it and without a green screen. So when I moved around, I kind of morphed with the piano behind me, and it was just not very effective.
Too funny. I heard today that Zoom has a new feature where, this is funny, and I'll tell you something funny about myself, that what I thought of, but they said that there's a new feature that, like, for women, it will allow them to change the color of their lips. It's a filter, video filter, and like change your eyebrows, and they were saying, for men, they can change their beard. So one of the guys was saying, I wonder if that lets you like get that gray out. But the whole thing's kind of funny. The gal said she had tried it, and it worked amazingly well on her lips. But I don't know if you can see, but I have these really tiny eyebrows, and it's always been kind of a joke with me and my wife that I have no eyebrows. I'm like, well, I got to try the eyebrows.
Well, maybe you get the full-on,
exactly.
What's it called, like Danny Levy or something, that actor that has the like ginormous eyebrows. You could try those.
Totally. Yeah. Well, how long have you known Arnaud Bosch? Is it Bosch or Bosch from SoundStorming?
I think it's Bosch. I've known him for, I'm going to say 2 years now, or a little longer. And when he started out the SoundStorming, he had an event, and we just a friend of mine and I went to the event and we talked to him a little bit. And he's a great guy. He's such a, I don't know, like such a good energy about him. And he loves music, and he was just, I don't know, he was very, very sweet. And then, with the SoundStorming, he did this competition, and I was the kind of producer in residence that, whatever winner, I would kind of like work on develop the song. And I'm very happy to tell you a lot of funny stories about this off the record after.
Wow. Okay. So I didn't realize you were part of the competition they did. Is there anything interesting that you would like to share with listeners about that? I guess we're kind of like a little promo for SoundStorming, but I've had some episodes about SoundStorming, so you don't have to explain that. I'll refer listeners to some past episodes for that. But what was the experience like for you that you were doing the competition?
Well, I mean, so Anu is great, and his partner, she is wonderful too, and they all have. I always, when it comes to music, I'm very careful with people's passions and not selling false hope, and I want to surround myself with nice people. Mm-hmm. And Anu definitely, belongs in that category, and he just, he loves music. And so the idea was to get a little bit of attention to SoundStorming by doing this competition. And a lot of very talented people. And the winner of the competition kind of managed to do every single possible thing you can imagine to implode and self-sabotage the career on the day before, the day after, and then in the mixing stage after.
Oh, wow.
So that was an interesting experience. And it's so I know in the studio, first time for me at Gold Diggers in Hollywood, everything was nice and the app was cool. It was just an interesting experience because I think, there was somebody who was a little too all over the place to understand how some of this works.
Interesting. I didn't hear any of this good stuff. Juicy stuff. Wow. Well,
I mean, the name of your podcast and all this is a little bit of like this kind of like development thing for me is something that I love to do. And I like science, I like education, and I like clean information and all of this. And it's interesting how many artists I see that so clearly self-sabotage every step of the way. And you really have this, I've worked with so many people where a door opens because they're lucky or something, and they try everything in their power to squander that moment they have. And that was one of those times.
Wow. And, I guess to varying degrees, it's not uncommon for this to happen. Now, if it was extreme, maybe this one was not so common. But, I think of myself, for instance, like they're just, how we put those kind of roadblocks up when we're trying to do things sometimes, and we need a little outside help to, navigate through the things that the obstacles we set up. But that's, interesting. I suppose with artists of any type, maybe can be more prevalent. I don't know if that's true or not, but I guess it's.
I mean, first of all, one thing that was really, I'm happy to do something as long as I learn something from it. And the SoundStorming experience was really interesting because there were 5-6 music professionals around there as well, people experienced. And because we all saw the same thing, we could try to address and help from different angles, and you could see everybody's perspective. But one thing that was really great for me about this was that it really helps if you're not the only person saying something. And what I'm trying to say is because I've developed artists before, and I think that one thing that I learned is that it's sometimes useful when you work, like this was a brief moment, but when you work with somebody longer, when you can find a second or a third or a fourth voice in the room, as long as that person understands where you're going, and then maybe somebody else's approach, somebody else saying something might open a door. And that was very, very useful. And because Arnaud surrounds himself with nice people, there were nice people who all tried to do the right thing in the room, and they all had a very different approach. And I was okay, the clock is ticking. You want to waste this chance? Okay, And there was somebody else who tried the, man, you're so talented, let's do this, and somebody else tried the energy flow in the room approach, and at the end, none of them worked. But I think that this idea of a team and different voices was yeah, it made life for all of us a little easier.
Wow. Well, to get to the kind of rush to the end of the story, did things work out ultimately where you guys could accomplish what you were trying to accomplish with the artist?
At some point, I packed my bags and just left, and because basically that there's something one thing that I see a lot with working with artists or something is that when I work with an artist who has a background as an athlete or has done something like this, they totally understand if somebody tells you, you know what, in order to achieve this in your game, you need to try this, like practice this specifically and then integrate it into your game. Any athlete gets that and they are not offended by it. They understand this is a building block for something better. When you work in music, because of passions and this idea of art, if you do the same thing, when you say, you know what, we could, I don't know, your timing is very relaxed, which is great for half of the album, but we also need you to be able to attack or be ahead of the beat. So let's work on this. Let's, take a couple of songs that may not come natural to you, like a cover or something, and practice that and try to get you in the habit that you can do both. So we have a plan A and a plan B. Mm-hmm. And that really, if somebody has been an athlete before, or if somebody is kind of open for that, you can make progress very quickly. But if somebody then thinks this is like a personal attack or this is my art, then you slow yourself down. And I had a composition professor who he said something fantastic, which is always think yourself as a craftsman, not as an artist. And I think that's fantastic advice. And his thing was like, if you're a carpenter and you have a limited market and somebody shows up and there's a piece of wood you haven't worked with, or, they want a chair with 3 legs or something like this, you're not like, like saying, oh, this is against my artist so-and-so. You're the craftsman that's supposed to build that chair, the end. And the huge difference with this approach is not that it's less artistic, but it is more about skills, learning, and progress. So as the craftsman, you have no excuse not to make progress. As an artist, you can find a lot more excuses. Yep. So I don't know, maybe that plays into that.
Oh, it's lovely metaphor and advice. Yeah, I really like it. Okay, on from that story. But thank you for sharing that. It's very interesting. You have a very broad career. You've clearly been at this a long time. So for those listening, I'm just going to kind of throw some things out there that you have been or you are. You are a singer-songwriter. You have dabbled, I suspect, in early days as a... Stop there.
I have to cut it there. Just one thing, because like anybody who knows me, when you say the word singer, it feels like this is so wrong. I'm just offending the universe if I don't contradict you there. I do write. I'm a songwriter and I write with pretty much all the artists I produce, and I sing horrific demos for them for vocal phrasing and stuff like this. But really, you don't want me to sing on anything. That's very important to know, and for you, your pets, your plants, and everybody to know.
Okay, got it. But you have an ear, clearly. And then feel free to, as they say, fact check me as I go along here. So I suspect in your early days you played some heavy metal guitar, have since progressed on to classical composition. You've done, looks like a number of international performances of your classical works. You lecture on composition and audio production. You're into artist development, which you kind of opened with. You've done a lot of music for film. And maybe for me, one of the more interesting things, only because I've never talked about it before, I read a little bit about it on your site, is audio branding.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about audio branding, and then tell me, separate from that, what are you doing today?
I think everything I do is storytelling, and I just happen to go into music because I love music, but it's always this approach that it's communication and it's storytelling. And I think that so as a film composer, for example, I know a lot of composers who try to go into film music and they are struggling because they don't understand that it's not about making the music beautiful. It's not about writing music that your can impress your mom with. A lot of times the out-of-tune guitar that is ugly and tinny is the right thing for for that scene or something. So that's me. I'm kind of like, I wanna get as close to some kind of truth you can get with the music, telling the stories, or with the lyrics. And the thing why I really like to do audio branding is that you have a marketing team or a CEO or somebody in front of you, and they tell you what the product is about, how they came about, and there's sometimes there's 20 years or 50 years history, and they want to subconsciously communicate that in 6 seconds of sound. And that's just fascinating and fun. And I love this very detailed, very kind of like, yeah, it's storytelling, but it's very clean, very simple in a way. And it goes like, I had a case where we did a vocal casting for the guy to say the name of the company and then their tagline, where they cast all around the world and they listen to thousands of voices to see what voice would represent this company. And I think it's totally fascinating, and it goes into, I'm very interested what is now called biohacking, but there's all things you can do with perception and space. And I think now 12, 15 years ago, I did a fear of flying guided meditation or relaxation for that Sennheiser is using for their noise canceling headphones. And there's so much you can do. And in audio branding, one thing that I work very specifically with is how does the sound interact with the virtual space that I create, and how does a listener feel about it? So there's a lot of fascinating stuff in a 6 second or 7 second logo.
Yeah, and it's kind of got the gears in my head turning about all the different ways that it can be utilized, and maybe the different meanings it brings to different projects, or different significances it brings to the various projects you do. So all these many things, many of which, or maybe all of which, you're kind of still involved in. Are you working on something? Well, for instance, Arnaud came to me and was like, hey, a friend of mine was kind of interested in, looking around at some podcasts that might be fun to do interviews on, and he thought of me. So what are you doing, and why were you looking to have a conversation like the one today?
Well, so I am for the last 18 months or so, I've worked with Amiena, who's an artist with a wonderful voice, who she came to a show, saw another artist I developed perform, and she found our music so fresh and exciting, and she herself, that's her words, felt that everything she does sound the same, and she wasn't very happy, especially with her last project. And so she basically sought me out and said, I want something that's more edgy. I don't want my voice to be covered up, and I want something that, that has some bite to it. And she played me a couple of artists and a couple of things. And so over the last 18 months, we worked on an album, and we worked on a new sound. We worked on very interesting new stories for her. And basically, just like I said with the audio branding before, it's very specific, very detail oriented. We kind of like recalibrated or redone like a new kind of music that she enjoys, that makes sense with her story and that makes sense with her voice. And so now we're recording this 1 week from the release of the first single. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things is I'm kind of like, I want to talk to a couple of people. I want to mention the project as much as possible, have the link in your show notes. And I don't know, we'll see. I'm trying to help her a little bit with attention. And for a kind of like music production or any of this, this is me very painstakingly producing, arranging, and playing. My buddy Ilko did a fantastic job on the mixing. Gene Grimaldi master. So this is kind of very, if you have a sub in your car, this is a very hi-fi, cool kind of hip-hop production with actual songs and a voice like Sade, kind of all nice. Rolled into one. So I want to talk about it and hope as many people give it a listen as possible.
Cool. How do you spell Amiena?
Amiena.
I was close. ENA. The Latin in me, or the recent immersion in Spanish in me, was wanting to put an I where the E goes. Amiena. Okay, cool.
And the song's called Halo.
Halo.
And
Okay.
yeah, and we finished the album pretty much. Then we might do one more song to add, but we're not sure. But we're technically done with the album, so it's kind of interesting when you have these songs lying around, as you can imagine, that you spend so much time on, and now it's a little bit of piecemeal. But it's nice for the first song to come out. And
cool. I forgot to ask where you're based and where did you record this? Where were you and Amiena working together?
So I'm in Los Angeles, in Toluca Lake, right between Universal and Warner.
Okay.
And when I was traveling Europe, and I had a whole thing planned when COVID hit, and then I came back here. And so once it was a little clearer what was going on, we decided to kind of music quarantine together and keep working on the album. And yeah, I record vocals here in my corridor. This might be a little misleading. When you hear the album, this does not sound like somebody recorded the vocals at home. But vocals I do here. We had bass and drums remote, and then there's me on guitar on a number of the songs, and yeah, I think that's it.
For those listening, we're actually speaking on the 11th of February 2021. When is the full album coming out?
Not really sure yet. We shot 2 music videos for the album is called Flares and Halos, and so the first kind of the bookends of this is a song called Halo, which is the first single, which is the kind of like the most I don't know, directly poppy and fun. Mm-hmm. And Flare is really, really dark, and they kind of like the 2 bookends. The question a little bit, and we have videos for both, and the video for Flare turned out amazing. We shot in a church here, and it's really dark and mysterious and really cool images. The songs are very, very different, and Flare is almost a metal song with a funeral march in the end, and Halo is a hip hop track with the Sade voice on top of it. So we will have to see a little bit how things develop with Halo. I'm also, I work in sync as well. So you pivot if you get a track placed somewhere. So theoretically, Flare is the second single, and then we could think about the album, but it depends a little bit if we shouldn't have a second song that is closer to Halo as a second single. We'll see.
Okay, that's interesting. I did notice that you appeared to do some things in sync. I checked out your website and found that out, so that's very cool. Yeah, I look forward to listening to Halo and seeing the videos, hearing the rest of it when it comes out. So since you know about the theme of the podcast, why don't we throw something in for all those indie musicians that might listen to this conversation, and maybe you have something better than this, but I wanted to ask if there's anything you would like to say to musicians aspiring to do whatever they do. What would you say to them today?
There's a couple of things that I'm passionate about where I think that people have very often are misinformed. So the first thing that I think is very important to understand is that a musician or a good musician or a good singer doesn't make you an artist or a writer. And that's a truth that a lot of people don't want to hear. And it takes as long as it took to be good on your instrument to be a proficient writer of music. And in composition, I have a bachelor's and master's in composition. I taught composition at a university level. People say 15 years of practice means you're not writing your limitations anymore, but you're writing what you want. So here's the advice to indie musicians. Work with somebody who has done the 15 years or do the 15 years, one of the two. Because otherwise what happens is that your talent will carry you only so far. And this is something that's very difficult to see from your side of things, much easier to see from the other side. And so that's, I think, and you will see that all big artists have a team of professionals. I understand with budgets that's tricky, but I would rather do 3 songs really well than an album meh. So that's the first thing. Writing is very, very important, and there is a substantial amount of development that needs to happen between somebody being a talented and engaging artist, singer, and an artist. Sometimes you see people be successful playing live, and it's because they are engaging personalities and they have a great voice, and basically that carries average material for a while. Mm-hmm. But I had an interesting case where somebody wanted to work with me who played a style of music that was just a little dated for the college radio scene, but he played on a lot of colleges. So after doing this round for 5 years, and he's a great singer, great live, he wondered why his sales wouldn't pick up, why he wouldn't get more followers on social media, and why this thing wouldn't take off, but the colleges would book him again. So basically what happened is that the person who books for the college sees that this is a great guy, great performer, and all of this. And so, people stick around, but when they leave, this guy didn't stick with them. And this is something where, this guy's working so hard. He's so good at a couple of elements of his profession, but he doesn't understand that at the end of the day, you are the oil, you are what makes the business flow when you play live. When you don't play live, it's the songs. And that's where I think that's very important, which a lot of people underestimate. And then, that term producer has become now anybody who has Apple loops on their computer. I think that the old-fashioned producer, somebody that, like Rick Rubin reading the poems of the singer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers and saying, wow, this Under the Bridge should be a song. That kind of stuff I think is very important. And I think that the recording at home, you're missing out on this. And I think this development side of it is a very important thing. So that would be one. Another thing is that it is just really hard, and logically, music business doesn't make a lot of sense. That's another thing to keep in mind as well. I am surrounded sometimes here by relatively big names, and you see that they are struggling to keep their studio open. And I sometimes wish that, somebody starting out with age 18 would, it would be explained to them that at the moment, only Spotify gets rich on Spotify. Mm-hmm. I can go on for hours, maybe if you have a specific question.
No, it's really good. I did, think of one thing, and I don't know if it's going to make sense or really fits in, but like you said of producing, recording music has become, and publishing music has become ridiculously accessible.
Yeah.
If somebody's been doing that for, years, recording from home, and, maybe they did 15 years of that and a pretty good songwriter, whatever, what kind of changes should they prepare themselves for to work into a development kind of relationship? Like what I gathered from what you were saying was consider, among other things, working with a producer who brings these certain types of a certain type of value and experience to what's going on. What kind of changes should they anticipate, and what kind of things maybe could they do to prepare for a relationship endeavor like that?
That's a very, very good question. Couple of different things. One thing is, if you go to a museum, part of what makes the art pop is the room in the museum the art is in. So somebody built this huge building, built all these rooms, set up these rooms, got security, did all of these things. So maybe a small painting on the wall would pop. And in a way, that's what a good producer should do. A good producer should understand who you are. And it's very important to me that somebody sounds more like themselves when we're done working together, not less, more. It's more of them. It's more unfiltered. It's more direct. And that's kind of this kind of setup. It's really difficult being the artist who painted the painting and also be the guy who runs the museum. And so I think one thing to prepare for is to understand that because you are the person, the artist, you have a unique insight, but you also have a unique blind spot. And so in an ideal scenario, somebody would develop you. That doesn't mean if you have interesting stories, things that you're passionate about, no producer should stand in the way of that. And no producer should take away anything, but there might be things, vocal takes you do that work for you, and then vocal takes that work against you. So for me, for example, I got a somebody recommend me for a project in London, and I'm producing this artist in London, and I heard the demo, and I went through the demo, and I thought that this vocalist made like over 90% of her choices were intuitively correct for that specific song, and that's very rare. So I knew this would, like take a lot of redos and demos away from us, because she just intuitively for this song knows where things go. I don't find that accurate for most singers. Most singers have something that is really cool that works for them, and then they sing a different song with a different topic, and they still do the same thing, even though the song doesn't ask for it.
Yeah.
I worked with a fantastic singer who had made all these like interesting kind of like creature noises and growls and all of this, and it almost became like a little stunt. A long time ago, a friend of mine called it the Alanis Morissette syndrome, where on that big Alanis Morissette album, there was one song that she sang straight. All the other songs kind of had the same kind of ornaments, the same kind of things. Mm-hmm. And so I think, like, working on these like small elements, and on this last project, for example, I played a lot of rap and hip hop to somebody who doesn't listen to rap and hip hop. And we played with the timing and learned, like worked on these things. And another thing that I think that's important to know is that the more you bring in terms of developed, carefully thought out, be it lyrics, be it visual ideas or whatever, the more you can kind of like, you steer the ship. If there is a creative vacuum, somebody else will fill it. And so I have this sometimes where I work with artists, and I tell them, look, we need this. Like basically, like whatever you want to fill this with, please fill it, but they don't. So at some point, somebody else will need to step in and fill this vacuum so that you can have a career, so you can move on. And that's something where, the more you have thought about your music in different ways, the more you have talked about, and the more you understand that, I don't know, I sing falsetto 80% of the time. I should really also try to see what my voice does all the way at the lowest bottom, so I have the strongest possible contrast, so I can get the biggest possible excitement within a song. Like development things like this.
Yeah.
So I think the best thing to do would be to have an open mind and to be patient. Basically meaning it takes a little while to open up habits and develop new sounds. And yeah, be brave. One of the things that I love doing is that when I work with people, I try, when you do an album or something, you try to start with as radically different ideas as possible. And the longer you work on the album, they all kind of move together. But when you're done with the album, you still have something where people have a reason to listen to song 3 or 5, rather than all of the songs sounding the same.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's good stuff, man. Thanks for that. I think will give people a lot to think about. And then to kind of wrap up here, where would you like to go in the remainder of this year and into next year yourself, professionally?
I have one project that I'm very excited about, which is a flying theater project in China, which is going to be a very nice production with full orchestra, choir, all of this, and where I get to fly to China and mix it in the room. And it's, the audience gets lifted in an LED tunnel and all of this. So this is something I'm looking forward to, because it's rare that in a film music context that you get to mix it for the actual room it's played in. And there's nothing else and in that space. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited about the rollout for these Amiena songs, because I think there's a lot of timely lyrics and a lot of interesting sounds and things you haven't heard. And then, of course, with COVID now, I have a lot less sessions. I'm looking forward to, writing more with artists in the room again. And then also when it's safe to finish my Europe trip from last year. That's a big one as well.
That would be great. That would be great. I hope that happens for you sooner than later, and for all of us who want to travel. So I know one good place to find out all things about you is that, I forgot to ask you. Maybe I'll let you pronounce it. So I was looking at your website. Maybe you could tell listeners that your URL for the website, because I'm going to butcher your last name.
Yeah. My wife's, I think, favorite moment on this planet was when we were. I got a call. Somebody left a call on the voice machine, and somebody said, "Oh, Mr. Douche, I heard this and that. I would so like to work with you." And and she said douche like 8 times. So a week or 2 after that, we went shopping somewhere. I gave my credit card, and the woman trying to run the credit card was trying to pronounce my name, and my wife leans over my shoulder and says, "It's douche." So it's Deutsch.
Deutsch.
And Lars Deutsch. I think at the moment the best possible way to find me or to look at is to just go to Facebook. I have a Behance profile, which is for all my like some of my latest film stuff. And if you just go to Facebook or Instagram and go from there, the website is terribly out of date. And one of my, like, this is how a producer should think. We needed to fix the website of the artist first.
Yes.
And when that is done, I will get to fix mine, which is like a little out of date.
And so where did they find you on Facebook then?
So it's Facebook, just Lars Deutsch, or
Okay.
you can Google me. And for film people, I started to use Behance because a lot of advertising people use it, and it's super convenient to update something. But you can see a lot of my work, and if you go through my Facebook feed or something, you can see a lot of my work and the stuff I do.
Well, the website, larsdeutsch.net, Deutsch, has some really interesting reading on it too. And my only critique of it was the font sure is small.
Yeah. I like this idea of undeniable, where you have something that is so simple and so clean, like you're not nervous about it.
Yeah, I like it.
And the website really, really got some good comments 9 years ago when it was designed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like by internet standards, this is now a ruin underwater. So it's time for an update. Yeah.
Well, cool. They can find you on Facebook and find your Behance profile. That's very nice. And great, man. Thanks for spending time with me this afternoon. Are you a musician or creator looking to get your ideas out to a new audience? Have you been wanting to create a podcast but a little lost as to where to start? Check out Podcast Startup, powered by The Unstarving Musician. It's a course I've designed to give you the know-how, tools, and resources to create and market a sustainable podcast like The Unstarving Musician. Podcasting has opened many channels for my own creativity, and I'd love for you to experience the same. To learn more, go to unstarvingmusician.com/podcast startup, or the show notes for this episode. This episode was powered by Bandzoogle, the easiest all-in-one professional website platform for musicians and bands. 2 things that will help ensure you're in control of your music business and your fan-based community are a website and an email list. Bandzoogle can help you do both. Plus, a solid website makes you look legitimate. Serious musicians, singers, songwriters, composers, and performers know this to be true. If you don't yet have your own website, check out Bandzoogle. It was created by musicians for musicians. I use it and I love it. It's as easy to use gets, and you don't have to worry about plugin updates and security patches. Bandzoogle takes care of all that for you. The features and support are both incredible. See for yourself. Go to bandzoogle.com to start a 30-day free trial and use the promo code ROBONZO to get 15% off your first year. Plans start at just $8.29 a month. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to start your free trial today. Did you know you can help other independent artists find this podcast by subscribing on Apple Podcast or wherever you are listening to your podcast these days? It really does help, so I hope you will consider it. The Unstarving Musician podcast is made possible through the support and generosity of listeners like you. One of the easiest ways to support the podcast, if you're a musician, is to join the Unstarving Musician community, which you can do at, you guessed it, unstarvingmusician.com. In joining the community, you get tips and insights you can use in your music journey that comes not only from me and my years of experience, but also from the hundreds of other musicians that I speak to as part of the Unstarving Musician project and podcast. Plus, you'll get a free copy of my Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs ebook, the official version, and that's all for free just for being part of the community. You can learn about other ways of offering support by visiting the Unstarving Musician crowd sponsor page at unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. And if you have feedback, please go to unstarvingmusician.com to get all my contact info. You can text me, call me, email me, leave a voice message right there on that page. Just go down to the bottom of the page and you'll find everything you need to know. I really would love to hear any of your comments, suggestions, questions, whatever you've got. And you can find links to just about everything talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. All right, I'm peacing out. Thank you for listening and sharing with your musician friends and fellow indie music fans. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.
A friend of mine is a music manager, and we had a coffee one day, and she said somebody asked her to watch this music career course, and it's like $350 to watch the videos and like this access to this website. And my friend had done tours for Beyonce and been in the industry for 30 years. And she said not one thing this person said is actually like relevant in the entire course she was supposed to give a blurb for. And she said, shockingly, even more than that, that guy has no credits in any shape or form that would qualify him to not say, and so one of the things that I have an issue with all of this is that the clean information is so difficult, and there's so many things that people tell artists who are passionate, who come to LA with with their savings or something that just don't work. Where I don't know, I could talk about this topic forever. So if you have questions about any special part, I'm very happy to help people not to starve, yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll make sure in the show notes they know where to find you. I'll put those links in there. And
yeah, and if you have, I don't know how, with your community or something, I'm happy to do Q&As and things like that. And because of my varied background, so for the Hofer Academy in Germany, they make really, really nice plugins, but they also have a fantastic audio engineering school. It's this kind of thing where they booked me for 4 hours, and I can walk up and talk for 4 hours, but I can also just do Q&A for 4 hours. And there's, just anything really. When say that one more time, misinformation is one thing. The other thing is I've spent a couple of years developing artists that at some point imploded because of homemade issues. So that's also something that I think that is not talked about enough. The stage mom that ends her daughter's career. I've seen that 3 times.
Oh no.
And yeah. So yeah.
Wow. Probably have a lot of wonderful stories. Cool. Well, that's a generous offer. I will keep that in mind. And if I could orchestrate something with the community and some people that would be interesting for you, I'd certainly do that. And I think just making yourself sort of, putting it out there as you have, that if people are interested and want to hit you up, that you'll do your best to offer whatever you can. So.
Yeah, and I what I do here, when there's no COVID or something, what I used to do is on a Friday or Saturday, I would go. There's a coffee shop down the street, and then if you want to drop in and ask your 3 questions or something, it's
cool.
not, yeah.
All right, Lars. Well, enjoy your weekend. It's coming pretty fast, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you.